and this is welcome to my Theory of Knowledge presentation. Religious intolerance. This presentation will predominantly dwell on the ethics area of knowledge. I will also stress my argument through the history and arts areas of knowledge. Also, I will teach you 3 out of 4 ways of knowing. Emotion, reason, and perception. First comes my real life situation, which will help me stress my point. It's commonly called the War on Terror. The conflict has involved numerous countries worldwide, including the UK, Canada, and France, to name a few. But if terrorist leaders like Saddam Hussein and more recently Osama bin Laden have been executed and no weapons of mass destruction have been found, what is the main focus of the war now for America? Money? Territory? Racism? As a knower, I proclaim there is a deep enigmatic motivator. I believe that a person is most called up to action when they must defend their beliefs. More specifically, it is one's religion or spiritual prowess that galvanizes the level at which they will go to defend their beliefs. Therefore, it's come to my attention that the War on Terror is, in some respect, a war between religious beliefs at the center. Keeping this in mind, this brings up, coached in TOK terminology, my knowledge issue. To what extent does religious intolerance lead to the decimation of a culture? This brings up my first knowledge claim. Lack of religious tolerance is the main stimulant of religious extremism and decaying of a culture. But when there's a claim, there's always a counterclaim. Lack of religious tolerance and their beliefs has been occurring for millennia. What makes it more of a dire issue than ages ago? I believe it's the level of intensity. A quote from Mahatma Gandhi will help me stress my point. An eye for an eye makes the whole world go blind. This quote expresses the irrelevancy of the violence, of the irrelevant intensity or the blind revenge. If we keep on acting in anger and acting in revenge, eventually the whole world's going to become blind to the truth of brotherhood and unity that we all try to promote. And this brings up to my next knowledge claim. Religious intolerance leads to the decomposition of the other areas of knowledge and all life as we know it. But religious intolerance is not the greatest danger pressing society today. There are many more negative mentionables. Yes, there are many other factors that are decreasing human morale and brotherhood in contemporary society. Politics, economy, healthcare, racism, just to name a few. But what if I told you religious intolerance was the catalyst of all these? Now what I'm going to do is rebuke this counterclaim through examples of how they are prominent in many of the world's issues. A few years back, an article was written by a man named Yoginger Sikhan in the newspaper called the Daily Times, analyzing a book put out by the British Rand Corporation that told the causes of the War on Terror. However, according to Sikhan, the book it is based on a warped understanding on the causes of terrorism. Now, why, you ask, was it warped? Primarily because the experts see Islamic militancy as simply an ideological phenomenon. The experts have no clues to the true stem of terrorism or the correlation between Islam and terrorism. Therefore, they classify the Islamic religion and militancy without taking into account economy, politics, etc. as the main reason for this upsurgence of evil in the past years in the War on Terror. The former head of the Rand Corporation acknowledged some of the absurdity himself. He recognized religious intolerance as a catalyst for the war and the emotions it inflares. He said, America's war on terror is an ideological war in which Islamic militancy has assumed a role that communism once occupied in the American imagination. Now, what does this mean? Islamic militancy is equal to modern communism? Communism, it was called, as it's called, the Red Scare in America, occurred after World War I. And in it, anyone who was believed to be a communist that followed communist views was deemed as a traitor and either killed or attacked for their beliefs or otherwise exiled from the country. And And now Islamic militancy has assumed the same role this has. This is an example of how this concept of fear is destroying all our areas of knowledge, and of course causing the fear to corrupt our authority and corrupt our senses of reason, as exhibited by my ways of knowing. There was a quote by the 43rd President of the United States, George Bush. He said, "Free nations are peaceful nations. Free nations don't attack each other. Free nations don't develop weapons of mass destruction." And there was a book called Imperial Hubris by a man named Michael Schuer, who psychoanalyzed the true cause of why America is losing the war on terror. He too derived religion as the source. He said Bin Laden has long said his main role in this jihad is as an insider or instigator who motivates Muslims to do his duty as outlined by God and in the Quran and by the Prophet in his words and actions. Going back to this Bush quote, just as I've said, this Bush's hypocritical statement is used to justify America's belief that the evil Islam needs to be put down. This hazardous thinking is what also prompts the Islam community, as exhibited by Michael Schuer's analysis of the Islam community, to conceive Bush and all of America as agents of Satan. Such an example is shown in my next real-life situation. As you see, we perceive them as the terrorists, but on the other side, they perceive us as the terrorists simply because we're trying to force our religious ideologies to them, and they're trying to do it to us. It's an invasion of beliefs, and this is what's causing the religious intolerance today on the war on terror, and it's also motivating its main driving force. Now here's the next comes on my next real life situation. On May 1st, 2011, the 44th President of the United States, Barack Hussein Obama, directed the assassination of Al-Qaeda terrorist leader Bin Laden. In a national announcement, the President stated, "Justice has been done," as thousands of Americans cheered. I'm not going to say the man shouldn't have died, but when has it come to the point where we celebrate the death of another human being, no matter background or belief? This is the deterioration of knowledge, emotion, and reason I am talking about. And Gabriel, I have a question to ask you. Why do you think Osama bin Laden's manipulation of beliefs led not only to his death, but deterioration of contemporary human morale?
Because Osama bin Laden used something as powerful as religion as to pull people together to do bad things, but religion should be pulling people together to have peace and harmony. But he used this to say that we're not accepted, so we're going to use our religion to attack other people and use God as an excuse or their God.
Thank you for your insight, Gabriel. Like my classmate Gabriel just said, he used religion as a motivator in order to use it as an excuse to motivate them for doing evil. Because there was in their jihad, in their religion, the other religions were impassing or coming on their religions and trying to overtake them. Therefore, they had a right to defend their beliefs, no matter how they would do it. Through suicide bombings, through bombing planes, and through spreading fear to others. Now I'm about to show you a picture right now. Take a second to read. As this says, this book has been used to justify waging war on those of other religions, converting them by the sword. This inflamed intolerance and hatred. This evil book deserves to be burned. As you know, this is Pastor Kerry Jones, the pastor that told about burning Qurans in order to send Islam a message. But as the assistant, he's about to burn the Bibles. He says, Pastor Kerry Jones says, I'm into Quran. Now this is an example of how perception and perspective comes into view, just as I alliterated through Osama bin Laden and Bush. Now our book, Pastor Kerry Jones says the Islam book, or the Quran, has been to inflame intolerance and has told people to do with their duty, even as it comes through violence. But this is the same exact thing as the this little assistant perceives the exact same thing that America is doing to other countries. We're using our Bible, our sense of superiority, in order to get over on them, in order to try to force our religions into them. And this brings me to my conclusion. Already proved that counterclaim wrong, and that counterclaim. And religious intolerance, if religious intolerance is not practiced enough, there will never be equality in this world. True equality, and in that sense, total tranquility in this world, is nothing more than a pipe dream. All religions of the world, while they may differ in other respects, unitedly proclaim that nothing lives in this world but truth, says Mohandas Gandhi. But what is this truth? The truth is, be the agent of change you want to see in the world. Religious extremists, political leaders, criminals, everyone dreams of a golden age, a utopia, a time of everlasting peace. Achieving the end to my knowledge issue may sound cliche, but it's up to you all. Instead of fighting against one's beliefs constantly, listen to your words and beliefs of your human brothers and sisters. Love them. A sage once said, although it was from a cartoon, a sage once said, I believe peace can be attained when people truly understand each other's feelings. Although the sage had foolish optimism and some reference, it spread the same idea I'm trying to say. Spread the infectious idea of understanding. Start practicing the peace you want everybody else to practice. Save humanity. Stop religious intolerance. I'm Michelangelo Hayes, and this has been my presentation on religious intolerance.